There's a quiet crisis unfolding on hundreds of millions of computers right now, and most people have no idea how serious it actually is. Not because their machines broke, not because they got hacked, but because of a decision made inside a corporate boardroom that could force nearly half of all Windows users worldwide into a corner they weren't prepared for. Some will spend hundreds of dollars on new hardware they didn't budget for. Others will keep using machines that are slowly becoming ticking time bombs. And a significant portion of those affected are the people least equipped to deal with it. Seniors, students, small businesses, schools running on shoestring budgets. This isn't just a tech story, it's a story about who gets left behind when a trillion-dollar company decides it's time to move on. If you're new to Nolan Tech, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because we upload new tech videos regularly that help you stay ahead. So here's what's actually happening. On October 14th, 2025, Microsoft officially ended support for Windows 10. Now before your mind jumps to worst-case scenarios, let's get one thing straight. Your computer didn't stop working that day. If you're still on Windows 10 right now, your files are intact, your app's still open, and your internet still connects. Microsoft didn't reach into your machine and flip a kill switch. That's a misconception that's been spreading fast, and it's caused a lot of unnecessary panic. What actually ended on that date is something more subtle, but in the long run, far more consequential. Microsoft stopped delivering three things that every modern operating system depends on: security patches, bug fixes, and technical support. Your system is now frozen in time. Whatever vulnerabilities existed in Windows 10 on October 13th, 2025, those get patched. But anything discovered after that date? Microsoft isn't going to touch it. The door is closed. And every month that passes without those patches is another month where attackers have a little more room to work with. Think about it this way. Imagine the lock on your front door. Every few months, a locksmith discovers a new technique that criminals are using to pick that specific model, and the manufacturer sends you a free upgrade to fix the weakness. Now imagine the manufacturer sends you a letter saying they're done. No more upgrades. From here on out, every new technique that surfaces stays in the wild permanently. Your lock never improves. The criminals, however, keep learning. That's the position Windows 10 users are in right now. In the short term, the risk feels manageable. The last security patch Microsoft released was still fresh when support ended, so the window of exposure was relatively small. But as we move further into 2026 and beyond, the gap widens, unpatched vulnerabilities accumulate. Cybercriminals catalog them, and unsupported systems become increasingly attractive targets for ransomware, data theft, phishing exploits, and a whole range of automated attacks that scan the internet looking for exactly this kind of exposure. Using Windows 10 for online banking, shopping, or anything involving your personal information in a year or two won't just be risky. It'll be genuinely irresponsible. Now, to understand why this is happening, you need a bit of context. Windows 10 launched in July 2015. That's nearly a decade ago. Microsoft has always maintained a roughly 10-year support lifecycle for its major operating systems. And by that standard, Windows 10 hit its natural end. Windows 7 got 10 years. Windows 8 got 10 years. The timeline itself isn't unreasonable. The controversy isn't really about how long support lasted. It's about what Microsoft is demanding in exchange for an upgrade and who gets shut out because of it. To run Windows 11, your computer needs to meet a specific set of hardware requirements that are more stringent than anything Microsoft has required before. The most talked about requirement is TPM 2.0, a trusted platform module, which is essentially a dedicated security chip embedded in your computer's motherboard. Its job is to handle cryptographic functions, secure boot verification, and hardware-level encryption. From a security standpoint, it's genuinely useful. From an accessibility standpoint, it's a wall that millions of people can't get over. Most computers manufactured before 2016 either don't have TPM 2.0 or only have the older TPM 1.2 version, which Microsoft has deemed insufficient. And that's before we even get to the processor requirements. Windows 11 demands at minimum an 8th generation Intel processor, that's 2017 or later, or an AMD Ryzen 2000 series chip from 2018 onwards. A 7th generation Intel processor from 2016, incompatible. An AMD Threadripper from 2017 that originally cost thousands of dollars, also not supported. Computers that are only 6 or 7 years old, machines that run perfectly well for everyday tasks are being locked out. Microsoft's argument is that these requirements collectively enable a more secure foundation. TPM 2.0, secure boot, and modern CPU security features all working together create a platform that's meaningfully harder to compromise than what Windows 10 could offer. That's probably true. But there's a brutal trade-off embedded in that reasoning, because the gap between more secure for people who can upgrade and no security updates at all for people who can't is enormous. A 2022 analysis by Landesk found that somewhere around 43% of Windows 10 machines at the time couldn't meet Windows 11's hardware requirements. Extrapolate that across a global install base that numbered well over 500 million devices, and you're looking at somewhere between 240 and 400 million computers that are technically incompatible. That is not a niche problem. That is a defining issue of this technology era, and it has implications that go well beyond software. If you're finding this breakdown useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to Nolan Tech. It really helps the channel and lets us keep making detailed tech content like this. The environmental dimension of this situation is something that doesn't get nearly enough attention. Consumer advocacy organizations and right-to-repair groups have been raising the alarm for over a year. The Public Interest Research Group in the US estimated that if even a portion of those incompatible machines get discarded and replaced rather than repurposed, the resulting electronic waste could reach approximately 1.6 billion pounds, around 700 million kilograms. To put that in context, that's more than 1% of the entire world's annual e-waste output, generated by a single software policy decision. Groups like Right to Repair Europe have framed this as software-driven planned obsolescence. And it's hard to argue with the logic. These aren't broken machines. They don't have failed hard drives or dead batteries or cracked screens. They work. The hardware is functional. What's changed is that the software manufacturer has decided that certain chips and processor generations are no longer acceptable, even though those machines can still run browsers, word processors, video calls, and everything most people use a computer for on a daily basis. Declaring them obsolete under those circumstances raises legitimate questions about whether security is really the only motivation at play here. There's some historical precedent that suggests public pressure can actually move the needle. When Google introduced Chromebooks into schools across the United States during the pandemic, those devices came with an automatic update expiration date, a hard cutoff after which the device would stop receiving software updates. Schools discovered they were sitting on fleets of relatively new hardware that would soon be unsupported. The backlash was significant. Parent groups, school districts, and consumer advocates pushed hard and publicly. Google eventually responded by extending Chromebook support to 10 years, reportedly saving schools an estimated $1.8 billion and diverting enormous amounts of potential e-waste. The question that a lot of people are asking now is whether Microsoft will face similar pressure and whether they'll respond the same way. So far, the answer has been a partial one. Microsoft created something called the Extended Security Updates Program, ESU, which provides a limited lifeline for Windows 10 users past the support cutoff. For individual consumers, the situation breaks down like this. If you're located in the European Economic Area, you can receive 1 additional year of security updates at no cost. If you're outside that region, you can also get that free year. But you'll need to sync your PC settings to Microsoft's cloud via a Microsoft account and sign into your device at least once every 60 days. If those conditions work for you, you're covered through October 2026. Alternatively, you can pay $30 directly for the same extended year, or use accumulated Microsoft reward points if you've built up enough over time. But it's only 1 year. After October 2026, consumer users are completely on their own unless they've made a change to their setup. Businesses have more runway available. They can purchase extended support for up to 3 years. But the pricing structure makes it increasingly punishing. Year 1 runs $61 per device. Year 2 is $122 per device. Year 3 hits $244 per device. The cost doubles annually. A small business with 20 machines looking to maintain security coverage for all 3 years is looking at a bill exceeding $14,000. At that price point, replacing the hardware starts to make more financial sense, which many observers point out is precisely the outcome Microsoft benefits from. That framing has fueled a significant amount of cynicism around this entire situation. Critics argue that the hardware requirements for Windows 11, the limited and expensive ESU options, and the aggressive end-of-life timeline all point in the same direction, pushing users toward buying new hardware, which drives Windows 11 adoption and generates revenue across the PC ecosystem. Whether that's the primary motivation or a convenient side effect is genuinely debatable, but the optics are difficult. A company valued at multiple trillions of dollars is effectively putting millions of users, many of them on fixed incomes, tight budgets, or in under-resourced institutions, in a position where maintaining basic digital security requires spending money they may not have. The burden falls unevenly. Wealthier users upgrade their hardware and move on. Everyone else gets squeezed. The person checking email and paying bills on a 2015 laptop faces the same end-of-support consequences as a tech company running a corporate fleet, but with far fewer options and far fewer resources to navigate it. So what are the actual paths forward? There are several, and each has its own set of trade-offs worth understanding. The first thing worth doing if you're on Windows 10 is checking whether your machine might actually qualify for Windows 11, and you just don't know it yet. Microsoft's PC Health Check app does exactly this. Download it, run it, and it gives you a clear answer about whether your hardware meets the requirements. If it does, upgrading is free and relatively painless. Go into Settings, navigate to Windows Update, and if your device is eligible, you'll see the upgrade option waiting for you. Your files, applications, and settings carry over. It's not a perfect experience for everyone, but for compatible hardware, it's generally smooth. If the health check comes back negative, you still have options. They just require a bit more willingness to venture outside officially sanctioned territory. There's a well-established method using a free open-source tool called Rufus that allows you to create a Windows 11 installation drive with the hardware restriction checks disabled. You download the official Windows 11 installation files directly from Microsoft's own website, then use Rufus to create a modified bootable USB drive that skips the TPM check, the secure boot requirement, the RAM floor, and the CPU generation filter. The installation then proceeds from that drive. This approach has been used successfully by a significant number of people. Reports from tech communities consistently describe Windows 11 installing and running on older hardware, machines from 2014 and 2015, systems with older processors, even some with no TPM chip at all. Many users report no meaningful issues. Others encounter occasional driver compatibility problems or minor performance inconsistencies, and the severity tends to correlate with how far the hardware falls below the official requirements. A machine from 2016 with a 7th generation Intel chip will likely have a smoother experience than something from 2012 running a much older architecture. There are also registry-based bypass methods that can be applied during installation, which require slightly more technical comfort. You'll be opening command prompts and editing system values during setup, but step-by-step guides exist for these processes, and non-technical users have worked through them successfully with the right instructions. The critical caveat throughout all of this is that Microsoft explicitly does not support this configuration. You won't have the same guarantee of receiving all updates. There's no safety net if something goes wrong during installation. And long-term compatibility as Windows 11 evolves is an open question. None of that makes the approach wrong for everyone, but it does mean going in with realistic expectations. For those who've run the numbers and decided that buying new hardware is the right move, the current landscape for budget-conscious buyers isn't as brutal as it was a couple of years ago. Entry-level Windows 11 laptops that will handle everyday tasks competently can be found starting around $500 to $700. Mid-range machines with more headroom for demanding tasks land between $900 and $800. Desktops vary depending on configuration. The core advantage is certainty. A new machine comes fully supported under warranty and won't face this particular problem again for the foreseeable future. The downside is obvious. Spending several $100s on a computer that becomes necessary largely because of software requirements rather than hardware failure is a frustrating position to be put in. The fourth option is simply staying on Windows 10 while you figure out a longer-term plan, and it's worth addressing honestly rather than just saying, don't do this. The reality is that not everyone is in a position to act immediately. Some people are waiting on finances. Others are mid-cycle with equipment they weren't expecting to replace. The risk from staying on Windows 10 in early 2026 is real, but not yet catastrophic. The further you get from the support cutoff, the more that changes. If you're in the situation in the short term, the practical steps matter. A reputable antivirus solution becomes more important than it was before. Being deliberate about what links you click, what sites you visit, and what software you install carries more weight on an unpatched system. Regular backups to an external drive or a cloud service protect you if something does go wrong. And having a concrete timeline for transitioning, whether that's 3 months or 6 months or the end of the year, gives you something to work toward rather than indefinitely pushing the decision. What's clear is that there's no comfortable path through this for a lot of people, and that's not a reflection of their choices. The hardware requirements that created this gap were a policy decision. The pricing on extended support was a policy decision. The 10-year cycle itself is reasonable, but the ecosystem built around the transition left hundreds of millions of users with limited good options. The pressure on Microsoft to revisit some of these decisions hasn't disappeared. Environmental groups continue to push on the e-waste angle. Consumer advocates are documenting the financial burden. And the numbers, with over 40% of Windows users still on Windows 10 well into 2026, suggest that the transition isn't going as smoothly as the company might have anticipated. Whether that eventually produces a response similar to what Google delivered for Chromebooks remains to be seen. What you can control is your own situation. Check your eligibility, understand your options, assess your actual risk based on how you use your machine, and make a plan with a real timeline attached to it, because the longer this stretches without a decision, the narrower the options become. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe to Nolan Tech, and turn on notifications so you never miss future tech videos. And here's something worth thinking about. What's your plan for dealing with the Windows 10 end of support? Are you upgrading, bypassing, switching platforms, or holding out and hoping Microsoft blinks first? Drop it in the comments. Genuinely curious what people are deciding to do out there.